13C. Today we're following up on a video we did about a week and a half ago on this brand new Masada from IWI. Now, one of the big questions that we have, and we covered it in the video, so if you haven't watched that first video, we talk about the sights in depth as far as point aim, point impact. Those sights are zeroed for 25 yards, and they're meant to be using that 3-dot system, not bisecting your target with the top of that front sight post, which is a little more standard for US shooters. I go into that more depth. Definitely check out that video if you want to know more about the factory sights and why a lot of people are reporting that it's shooting low at closer ranges like 7 and 10 yards. That's because it's zeroed for 25 and you're supposed to be using a 3-dot aiming method, not the top of that front sight post. Anyway, go back, check out that video. I cover, I think, pretty well all the questions related to the gun and to that. It's about a 25-minute video almost. It's a long video, but it is full of accurate, correct information as of this moment. There's nothing in it that's not accurate, that's not current, that's not as of date, and that doesn't address virtually every single question that I've seen asked so far. Now, onto these sights and replacing these sights, we're going to talk about some working on fitment. We're going to talk about how suppressor height sights, be it from Night Fision or any other company, be it on the Masada or any other handgun, are going to give you a higher point of aim, point of impact at closer ranges because you've got that height over bore issue that is standard with any suppressor height sights. It's no different than putting a high mount on a rifle. And having a height over bore issue at close range in a rifle, obviously it's even, you've got 2.5 inches of height over bore issue, let's say, as opposed to this, but it still translates, what you're seeing here translates to the paper downrange. And we're going to go through all that. We're going to put rounds on paper and talk about it. Right now, let's talk about these sights specifically from Night Fision here. We talked about them in the past. We did another video on these sights probably 2 years ago. I put some on a Smith & Wesson Shield that I use as a backup and occasionally primary carry when clothing and conditions don't allow for full-size carry. And those sights are still going strong. Night Fision bills it out as the brightest sights on the market because they use 30% more tritium in their vials. I have no way to quantify that and measure it. I'm not a laboratory, but I will say with those sights then and still now, and with these that came in, they are by far the brightest sights out of all the other sights that I have. Meprolite, Trijicon, these are significantly brighter. I'll put in a picture here. One of the newest guns that we had in was CZP-10C with a threaded barrel and suppressor height night sights. Compared them to these, and it's laughable how much brighter these are than what came in that CZ. And of course that CZ, the production model, it was barely a month old when I got that gun based on its production manufacture date versus when it came in. So it's not like it's a new gun anyway. We're digressing. Anyway, that's where we are there. They're CNC machined out of steel, nitride coated, and they're put together here in the US, and the tritium comes from Switzerland actually. Two different kinds of rears on that Smith for carry. Had the U-notch in it, which is actually pretty cool. I think it aids in helping picking up that sight, especially for something that's going to be more close quarters. And using something that's more of a subcompact type gun or pocket gun, if you will, mouse gun, even though it's still in 9mm, still a very extremely capable caliber, one of my favorite calibers when I can get in caliber wars. Anyway, this one has the square notch on it. The suppressor height sights for the SIG only come with one option for the rear that I believe that I'm aware of, and that was the square notch, which I'm perfectly fine with for this application. It's a full-size handgun, and I kind of want to go with something like that because when I want my accuracy, I want accuracy more so than speed on something like this, and the trade-off is very minimal. But it is there, and it is something I thought was interesting. If you haven't played with both, definitely I think it's something you should probably look into. Anyway, there's a ton of different color options for these. We won't get into all the color options. I will say I went with white for these. I went with actually green for the Smith & Wesson, and I probably might have went with green ring on this anyway. But what I wanted to do was, since the RMR2 here, the HRS, which this video is going to be coming out next week, and you'll see these sights getting beat up with this as well as we do some more testing on this and do some somewhat mean stuff to this. So we'll be testing these sights more as that goes on. But the reason why is the front screen of these RMRs are very heavily tinted and coated. Now part of that is for glare reflection, being able to pick up the dot easier in different environments, stuff like that. There's good reason behind it. At the same time, it puts a huge color distortion looking through there. Not huge, but when you're trying to put your sights on a target through this iron sights, you wouldn't want to go with the red. You wouldn't want to go with the blue either, I don't believe. The blue, I think, with this kind of bluish type hue to it would be a bad idea. I would stick with, you know, white, honestly. That's what I would do. But you have other options if you want, but try and stick with more neutral standout colors. Really quickly, let's talk about fitment. As with any aftermarket sights, they're going to be sized slightly bigger than the cuts that they're made for, and the reason for that is that if you've had previous sights installed, whatever, the cuts were off a little bit. If they were sending out sights that were too thin and they were just sliding out, that would be bad. So rather send them out a little bigger. You can do fitment. Technically, you know, a licensed gunsmith or certified gunsmith, some kind of gunsmith should be installing this. I use a punch, you know, like for the other ones, a punch and a hammer. It'll get the job done. Put it in a vise, easy. You know, buyer beware, all that stuff. You know, use a professional, yada yada. As far as for this, what I did was on the leading edge or the front corners where to get this started, I tapered those front corners with a file and cut the edges off of them. It made for easier insertion and also cuts down on some of that forward drag as you're driving it through to where it needs to be. I also put a little bit of oil in there to make it a little easier. You're saying oil, why didn't you know, what about the Loctite? I don't use Loctite on these sights because I've got that extremely tight fitment in there and I'm counting on that friction to hold them in place. These things are not going anywhere. You got to wail on these things with a hammer to get them in place if you're not filing those edges down, which is fine by me. I don't have to do them, and then when I go to knock these things out, if I ever need to, if I want to recoat, slide, something like that, I'm not fighting the Loctite and possibly destroying the sights. I can get them out, reuse them, put them back on after whatever kind of coating or treatment is done to this. Now, there's one more fitment issue to consider with these. These are the SIG sights. They're cut for SIG cuts, SIG P series cuts, but the top of that SIG in the back is pretty flat. This has just a little bit of a curve to it, and what you'll kind of see here is in the front, you'll actually see a little bit of a gap through there, tiny gap, and that's fine, that's normal. You should technically have that slight gap there if this was a SIG gun. It's not a SIG gun though, so with that curve, you're going to drag just a little bit on the front here. Now what I did was I just took a file and very lightly polished the bottom of this. I really didn't take off any material. It slid right on, it was fine. If you wanted to take off a touch of material under there, I don't see how it would hurt anything. As I was filing it got super slick, and that was it. I was done. They hammered right into place fine. And then the front went in without issue. I did cut the front two leading edges again to help get them started and drive them through. Otherwise, that should cover that. Let's hit the range. Here we are with our two 5-round groupings. I used 115 grain, full metal jacket, just plain Jane ball ammo, the El Cheapo stuff, and we were at 7 yards using the two different aiming systems, or methods, I guess I should say. The first one, I took the top of this front sight post and I bisected the bull and pressed off the shots, and there's our 5 rounds nice and tight. I do significantly better with that type of aiming method than I do with the 3-dot. At 7 yards, you're not going to tell that big of a difference. Obviously, I pulled this one down into the left. That was my shooting technique more so than my aiming. I would assume anyway, as I felt that one break. In any case, there are our 4 right there. Not a significant difference there between the two. One of the reasons why I wanted to put this one up was to show that at 7 yards especially, where a lot of people do their shooting, and even 10 yards, you're not going to notice that huge of a difference, especially on Suppressor Height sights, using those two different aiming methods. Now, where that really does come into play is at different ranges, different distances, but we get in that and we talk to that in the other video where you're talking about the different 3-dot aiming methods versus bisecting the top front sight post. I won't get into that here. If you want to go back and see that, you can. We've covered it in other videos as well. Anyway, I wanted to put that up here. As you extend out from the target, these differences, point to aim, point to impact, shrink significantly. So these groupings will come up as you move further back. Obviously, you get to a certain point and they're going to start dropping off again, because as the round travels in its trajectory, as you use your sights, there will be the flight path of the bullet straight, but it will be a curve. Anyway, long story short, that's where you are right there. And hopefully that answers that question, because that was a huge one that I had come up that wasn't fully addressed, especially going with Suppressor Height sights in the previous video between these two. I think that should cover it. and some of the comments that were made. If you have any questions about the pistol, please check out that previous video. I know it's a long video, it's about 20 minutes long, but we go in depth about the mounting plates and stuff like that to cover every single question that we could think of, or that's really been asked up to this point, with the exception of Suppressor Height sights anyway, in regards to this handgun. Because there were a lot of questions we had that we dealt with right out of the gate. So definitely, if you, after watching that video, if you have any more questions about this handgun, I'm more than happy to answer them. Leave them in the comments down below, facebook.com/gun reviews. You can also find us on Instagram. We're at 13C Gun Reviews. We're getting a little more active over on Twitter as well. And don't forget our newsletter. We only send out about one email every 10 days. I think last month, actually, we only sent out one email for the entire month. We won't spam you out, and we never send more than one email a week. It's a great way for us to stay in contact. YouTube just hit us again with more of their shenanigans across the channel, so who knows how much longer we're going to be there on YouTube. Full 30 and Gunstreamer. Please check us out there. You can find full links to everything there and on our website that YouTube may not allow. And there you go. Thanks again, everybody. Take care, stay safe, and stay vigilant. There's a lot of craziness out there in the world today, and make sure you're staying on top of it, both emotionally and physically, and staying prepared.